Thank you for watching this brief presentation of Isaac Keep's plan of ministry. This plan is the result of a core group of families seeking hard after God's will for a church plant. It's not really out of a book, though a lot of books helped us get to this point. We hope that this plan is about God and His glory. So why a plan of ministry? We started here with what we thought was a good question. It's a question we wrestled with as we wanted to balance stewardship of God's blessings and calling with His sovereignty. So we set out in this to not outthink or outplan God. We've seen and read about churches doing just that, and we're okay with waiting on God. You'll quickly find that appearances are not our utmost concern. We really want something real and about God. So we believe a good plan of ministry is about getting on board with what God has done, is doing, and will do as revealed in His Word. It always allows God to be God and not constrain or deflect from Him. We also thought a plan of ministry should be really simple and focused, easily communicated, but not too cheesy. Again, we don't think God is nearly impressed with our cute mottos or taglines as we are. Finally, we also wanted a plan of ministry comprehensive enough to include all biblical church actions and functions. We don't want a plan of ministry to sit idle in a notebook of good ideas. We want our plan of ministry to be essential in guiding and evaluating our church's ministries and functions. Again, while the plan of ministry serves as a starting guide and an evaluation tool, it is only after being soaked in prayer. The plan does not negate the need for constant prayer as we minister. So here is the plan of ministry in flowchart form. We'll look at each of these principles separately, but we want to emphasize that the plan is all connected. Nothing we do is outside of worship. Isaac's Keep is about worshiping God. All that we desire to do is toward making God's greatness known. A renewed perspective on worship is perhaps the first and greatest step toward embracing this plan of ministry. We must be recaptured by God, and more specifically, recaptured by the gospel. When we lose our focus of the gospel, we lose focus of God. Our perspective must be renewed and maintained to effectively remain a church of the living God. This renewed and maintained perspective should go far beyond mental or spiritual assent and into the very fabric of our lives, from the way we speak and relate to the way we serve and live. Worship is the living demonstration of the believer to God. And when our perspective of worship is recaptured by God in the gospel, then one of our priorities is to nurture and educate that vision of worship within the body. We call this strengthen. When we try to strengthen ourselves without the vision of worship, we may indeed teach people facts about God, but we will not necessarily educate nor nurture them into a vision for God that will produce a passionate disciple. In other words, our priority for strengthening the body must flow out of our desire to worship Him. Then discipleship, the strengthening of the believer into a more educated, devoted, and passionate God worshiper, pushes forward a vision of God within each of us by deepening our desire, deepening our love, and thus strengthening our capabilities to see and to savor God. This is what we believe to be true discipleship. As disciples who are strengthened in a passion for God, we shall also be about spreading that vision for God's glory. Spreading the Word of God is another priority of the body. In fact, we see it as the natural response of the believer who is truly in love with Christ. Without the priority of spreading God, the believer begins to rot, and the passion and the strength is weakened, even crippled, and the church falls lukewarm. Spreading God is the only sign that we as a body are truly a living and breathing body. A body that doesn't move is dead and cannot worship nor strengthen itself. Furthermore, spreading God through the gospel pleases the Father and is the great mission of the church and the advancement of God's kingdom. If God is really our vision for worship, then that vision must be rooted in the gospel. Worship, vision, and passion, if not rooted in the gospel, leads to many errors. God is most gloriously revealed in Jesus Christ, and we only know about Jesus Christ through the gospel. Therefore, the gospel is foundational and central to the body. If Jesus is the head of the body, we can reasonably infer that the gospel is the heart of it. Therefore, our plan of ministry and subsequent functions as a body must find their basis in the gospel, or we risk minimizing or losing focus of God. We are able to worship because of the gospel, and the gospel leads us into seeing and savoring God. In turn, to strengthen the body is to strengthen her in the gospel. If we try to strengthen her on or in anything else, we are on sinking sand. Jesus Christ, the gospel, is the foundation, the heart, and the bloodline to the strengthening of the church. Furthermore, the gospel is the object of what the body spreads in evangelism, missions, and loving deeds. Without the gospel, we may spread religion and morality, but we will not spread a vision of God. We will not communicate the power and glory of God. We will not show others the blood that leads to seeing and savoring Him. The gospel must become our love, so much that our hearts, our minds, and our souls are caught up in it. We must cultivate our lives to fit the gospel and avoid the temptation to change the gospel to fit our lives. We must learn and speak the language of God's kingdom. Our very lives must be centered on the reality of the gospel. This is the plan of ministry for Isaac's Keep. It sets the priorities and principles for which to build. This plan of ministry is interconnected. Worship sits atop the priority because without it, the other priorities are in vain, if not impossible, to accomplish. However, strengthening the body and spreading the gospel are each acts of worship that glorify God. Furthermore, spreading the gospel can also be an important part of strengthening the body. For when we spread, we are strengthened. And when we are strengthened, we are moved to spread. The priorities are connected with worship as the supreme priority of the church, accomplished by strengthening the body in a passion for God and spreading that passion and glory to all. This plan of ministry is quite simple, and we recognize the danger in its simplicity is that one may justify many activities, events, functions, or ministries by attributing them to one of the priorities. As we move forward in the functions and ministries of the church, it should be through the plan of ministry, and the plan of ministry should not be used merely for backwards justification, but rather used to truly discern, is this function, ministry, event, etc., really an expression of worship that strengthens or spreads a vision for God and the gospel? The purpose statements, values, and visions of all functions and ministries should reflect the perspective, language, and vision of the plan of ministry. Furthermore, the budget of Isaac's Keep will also reflect these priorities, principles, and plans. As a church body, we must stay on point with the vision and plan that God has set before us, always correcting, embracing, and connecting the plan of ministry with the Word of God. The page you are currently viewing is how the plan of ministry shall look in application. If you have any questions or comments about the plan of ministry for Isaac's Keep, please don't hesitate to contact the church elders at elders@isaacskeep.org. That is ELDERS@ISAACSKEEP.org. We'll be glad to address any of your questions. Thank you for watching, and may God's grace be with you.